And so as we start this next session on the politics of being with Thomas Legrand, I just want to make a little brief bridge from the last session. You know, in our last session, we talked about the concept of hataraku from Japan, hata meaning others, and raku meaning relax or free. And this has to do with their concept of business and being a business person. Just to notice that, again, in terms of the politics of being, how interesting that hataraku has to do with others and relaxing and being free to engage. It reminds me of how in the previous session from the Americas, the concept of business is expressed as negocio, which means not leisure. Negocio is the no leisure. Ocio is leisure. Neg is you're not in leisure. You're doing something, which is the same in English as busyness. You're just being busy. And in Swedish, we were before in the countries of Europe, the concept is expressed as näringsliv. Näringsliv means nourishment for life. How is our concept and our identity of being? What are the politics of being? So I'm going to then pass this right over to Thomas, who's going to take us through the rest of this time. Thank you so much. Before I go, I also wanted to give a thanks to the people of the Art of Hosting. They are throughout helping us with this process. We had before Cata Ramirez, who was helping us with the earlier session, and Cuyen from Vietnam, who was helping us as well. So thank you very much, those of you from the Art of Hosting, for supporting us. Thomas, all yours.
Thank you very much, Alexander. Hello, everyone. What a pleasure to join you for this 24-hour connectathon. It's great to feel connected to the rest of the world and hear, you know, what every cultures can bring to this discussion and offer their ancient futures wisdom. I like this term to the discussion, and indeed the politics of being really welcome, you know, all the contributions of all wisdom traditions, and in a dialogue with science. And I will come back at the end of the presentation to say that what I'll present at the end needs to be owned and contextualized by every culture through getting back to their own roots, in particular traditional wisdom, spiritual traditions, etc. So very happy to be with you today. I'm in New York at the moment. I've been traveling to promote this book in Mexico and the US, and I'm spending some time in New York, where it is a climate week, you know, in parallel of the United Nations General Assembly. So that is why I've been a bit running all day to go to events and meet wonderful people. So I was proposing to start with a very short mindfulness practice, just to settle down. I live myself in France, next to Plum Village, which is a mindfulness practice center of Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh. So I invite you to take a comfortable position, well seated, with the spine upright. You can close the eyes if you like, and just feel the contact of your feet with the ground. You can feel the contact with your seats. You can feel your body and the contact of your shirts with your skin, on your shoulders. As you connect with your body, sometimes we forget we have a body when we sit in front of a computer like that. We may feel some pain sometimes, and we can just make room for that, not fight against it, but just smile to it. We can start feeling our breathing. Or breathing in. And our breathing out. And how our body moves while breathing. Our belly. In and out. You can just pay attention to our breathing from the beginning to the end. We follow our breathing. And we can notice and appreciate how good it feels to offer us a break. A break to be with ourselves. Our breathing. Our bodies. And we can notice how we feel inside. Emotions that have been with us during the day. We can smile to them. And appreciate being here together. Appreciate the wonderful intention that is around which we gather tonight, today. Can feel connected to all those that participate in this 24-hour event around the world. And we can slowly come back. Thank you. Thank you. That's really helpful, at least for me. So I'm my journey, I think, started 20 years ago when I was doing a student exchange in Mexico, and I connected with the native spiritual tradition there, and experienced through that a deep reconnection with the earth and also with myself. And this led me to a path of service, and later on to do a PhD in ecological economics and work on tropical forest conservation and other important issues such as climate change or sustainable finance. But from that time, because I was realizing, the importance of this spiritual connection and the change it has brought to me. I was aware that there was a big human potential and that we could translate at a collective level. And indeed, that's what was needed for our times. So when I was in Mexico 20 years ago, I was hearing for the first time these Mayan prophecy about a change of consciousness, and later realized there have been these kind of prophecies and announcements in a lot of different traditions, and now we see more and more happening, in even in organization with which I work on, like the United Nations. More and more people just speak simply about a change of mindset, or sometimes a change of consciousness, a cultural change. So I was aware 20 years ago, it made a lot of sense to me already. And usually we talk about that from the bottom up, like people do their own inner transition, and then they can contribute to society in a different way. But as I was working on policies, it came the question about, okay, how can we organize society in a way that embody and support these transitions, these different type of consciousness. And for me, it has become, as for many others, and I think we see, and that will keep increasing very quickly in the coming years. As an environmentalist, I realize also that our current development model, focused on economic growth, is so antagonistic to the environmental agenda that we need really a profound reorientation of this model. We know we need a profound reorientation of our lives, both at the individual, but also at the collective level. We really need to reprioritize what we are here for, what are the objectives we set for ourselves in our lives. And as I was working with, for example, United Nations agencies, sometimes in very strategic assignments, like working on the green development strategy of countries, etc., I realized also that there was never the space to have this deeper conversation about what are the fundamental drivers of our problems and how we can address, these, I would say, cultural, which is about culture, right, and mindset. So that's why 10 years ago, I started to work on this book, Politics of Being, Wisdom and Science for a New Development Paradigm, which has been published in January this year. So I will present just the first, a quick presentation on that reflection, and share my screen. Okay, here we go. So the first thing, as I was saying, the need for cultural evolution. This is a sentence from the Human Development Report, which is probably the most influential publication on human development in 2020, which said, nothing short of a whole shift of mindsets is needed to navigate the brave new world of the Anthropocene. So we see more and more that recognition, and as I said, it is increasingly being recognized. And I think this cultural change is of a spiritual nature, and I will explain a little bit more later what I mean. But just to recognize that the Earth Charter 20 years ago already recognized that we need a change of mind and heart. Why is that so? I think it's simply because over the last centuries, we have grown our power, especially our power over nature. And this has led for a great development of our societies, which has grown also more complex. But the problem is that we have not invested the same amount of efforts in growing our wisdom that is necessary to balance that power, to make a good use of that power, and to deal with the complexity of the world it has brought in the world. Sorry. So as the Dalai Lama said, the fundamental problem is that at every level, we are giving too much attention to the external material aspects of life while neglecting moral ethics and inner values. So I think we have to recognize some people, are asking, is the world going better? Is the world going worse? Well, I think it is both. It's complex. And why is that so? it is because, you know, every culture is articulated, we could say, around a story that tells us how things work, what is possible, where do we come from, what are our goals, etc. And the Western modernity for the last few centuries have been anchored in what some like Ch.𝐿 Eisenstein call a story of separation, where we feel separated from one another, where we feel separated from the natural world, and we see the world from a purely materialistic vision as just inert matter. And in that world, individuals are considered as material self-interest maximizers. So like everybody is there just to act in society, just to maximize its own material self-interest. And so this story has been is anchored into some values like individualism, materialism, reductionism, anthropocentrism, etc. And it has led to a development model for societies, which can be summed up as a program, let's say a cultural program for societies, which is about mastering nature to fulfill our material needs. So this story is less and less adapted to the world as it is now, and it's becoming increasingly destructive. And it is based on this worldview is based also on some shaped by some scientific findings that for many of them date back already probably to the 19th century, for example, and that as our culture evolves and also new research led to a different, is opening the path to a different worldview, a different narrative that we can call the story of interbeing, in which we recognize that human flourishing is indeed very linked to the connection we have with others, the connection we are with nature that we are part of, and that even the universe may have consciousness, etc. So from this new story comes a different program from our societies that we could sum up as thriving together as one Earth family, and we recognize our fundamental interconnectedness. So there comes also a different role for a human being, different way to look, to consider human beings as responsible member of the Earth community. So that is why, you know, because we have these two stories, one that is as difficulty dying, and the other one is being as difficulties being born. That's why we are, as Yuval Noah Harari said, we are on the threshold of both heaven and hell. So we need a new development paradigm. This is well recognized, and there are many proposals for that on the table. And people say that we need a development paradigm that is more sustainable, more qualitative, more human, more integral. But behind that, I believe there is a fundamental orientation, which is from having to being. And indeed, the Earth Charter, again, say when basic needs have been met, human development is primarily about being more, not having more. And that is congruent with the cultural evolution that social scientists like Engelhardt, who manage the World Value Survey, observed in rich countries over the last decade. So he observed a cultural change from materialism to post-materialism, and more fundamentally from survival to self-expression. So the politics of being is really the politics that puts being as our main collective goal and means, I would say, because we know spiritual teachings tell us that we can't separate the means and the goal. It's a wisdom-based approach informed by science. So that's very important. I think we need to find the right balance, how we can have this dialogue between wisdom and science. What is the role of each of them informing this dialogue? And I would say that wisdom can tell us the direction, can tell us, for example, the values we should cherish in society, and in science can tell us how to do that, as we will see. And when I mean being, I think it's very important to recognize that here we are talking not only about human beings, but about all beings, all beings on Earth. So it's really just simple. Like if money having is not a goal; it's a mean, and we recognize that people can that the real goal could be happiness, or maybe a certain version of it that we could call fulfillment or flourishing. I think it's about expressing our full potential, which we can sum up as becoming who we are and the best and most complete version of ourselves. And the politics of being aims at aligning our institutions with this, which I believe is our true reason to be here on Earth. So we just need to align our institutions, the way our societies are organized, with what we are here for, what is really important. And I think that's very reasonable to say that there is as I've just seen, there is a fundamental aspiration for self-expression, and at the same time, philosophical teachings have all told us how important it is to have societies organized to allow its members to cultivate their virtues and qualities, whether it is Aristotle in the West or Confucius, for example, in the East. Well, we know that on the long term, our institutions need to cultivate these kind of human qualities and virtues. So the problem is that, as recognized by Elinor Ostrom, which has been the first woman to receive the Nobel Prize in economics, all societies are, on the contrary, because they are based on this story of separation, they are, on the contrary, rather nourishing our instinct for competition, retaliation, for egoism, etc., greed, etc. And indeed, when she received that Nobel Prize, she said that basically her work, people were thinking about institutions. For the last half century, they all assumed that people were selfish. It was like the Homo economicus. And they all assumed that, and that then our institutions tried to neutralize this in the public space in order not to affect negatively too much society. And during that talk, she said the main lesson she has learned of 15 years of work is that, on the contrary, institutions should be designed to bring out the best in humans to support genuine overall progress. So the idea is that if you're trying to fix a problem from the wrong paradigm, you're just strengthening that wrong paradigm, that story of separation. So when you deal with an issue, you deal a problem, you need to fix it, but also while cultivating human qualities and virtues to support genuine overall progress. And I will give a very concrete example just now. But just to mention that really the vision I think we need to cultivate is that one, how institution can provide favorable conditions for being or human flourishing. And then that would allow individuals to flourish and to develop the wisdom to adapt and refine this institution. So the idea is to start a virtuous circle where we grow at the same time happiness, flourishing, and wisdom. Oh, sorry, I don't have here so the example I wanted to give about that I often use is the justice sector. So for example, every society need a justice system because they need to maintain order in society and social harmony. But there are very different ways to do that. The way we do it, for example, if you take the case of the US, it's very clear. The vision of justice is that of retributive justice. So basically, we think there is justice when someone that has done wrong is being punished in proportion in return. And this system is not working. We have a systemic crisis of the justice system, especially in the US, but also in many countries, where there is a lot of more and more people in jail, more and more time and cost associated with it, and a lot of recidivism. On the contrary, so this is based on our instinct for retaliation, for punishment, right? I don't think it's the best we have in us as humans. But on the contrary, the alternative paradigm that has been indeed practiced by many indigenous societies for centuries and millennium is called restorative justice, in which when a harm has been done, the community gathers. It brings together also the victims and the perpetrator, and they have a conscious dialogue, which fosters, a capacity, which cultivates our capacities to listen, to understand, to empathize, to take responsibility, to be courageous. So, all the people involved in that process, while they are dealing with a problem, at the same time they cultivate their human qualities, and it's clear that it's a system that brings much better results. Victims and offenders are much happier, much more satisfied with it. It's much less costly. I was in Las Vegas a week ago when they do this kind. They had a program of restorative justice. They were saying the comparison was doing a case was $10,000 in restorative justice, where it might be $500,000 in the retributive justice system. The question is that what kind of systems do we want to refine? Because the quality of the outcomes of that systems depend a lot about the attention we bring, the investment we made, the capacity building. So really, as societies, do we want to refine this system based on punishment, or do we want to refine this system of restorative justice, which is based on cultivating the human capacities and values? So I was already mentioning in that new story that is appearing, the story of interbeing, and is based on new scientific research, that it recognizes that that human flourishing is not, about accumulating money or power. This is like more the systems we are in, and that runs, especially our economic systems, really feeds from undisconnected, egocentric individual. No, these are the ones that consume and that are operating in that economic system that feel separate from other humans and nature. And what research tells us is that it not only brings, of course, it brings capital accumulation, it brings environmental and social destruction, but also it brings a lot of human suffering. So these disconnected individuals that prioritize money and fame, which are external rewards, often are very disconnected from themselves, and that's why they tend to experience more suffering. And happiness science tells us also that rather all happiness comes from these three connections: to oneself, to other humans, the importance of relationships, and also highlight all the benefits that comes with connecting to nature. And I think I call that spiritual progress. The more we connect with ourselves, with others, and nature, the more we get closer to our true nature, and the more we cultivate the best version of ourselves. And why is that so? I think we also now we have the possibility to have access to the experience of mystics from different traditions and what they can tell us about the fundamental about our true nature and the fundamental spiritual experience they've had. And they all say that it's about unity or interbeing or oneness, whatever word they use. So I believe the more we are cultivating this three connection, the more we are expressing getting closer to our fundamental true nature. And the good news here, we have a very positive narrative for the transition we have to do, where we can be better, be better as human beings, and also have the earth being better, societies being better, right? It's while in the having paradigm, if we were reasonable, we'll have to recognize that if you want to lower our consumption in that paradigm, that means we would be less well. We would tend to believe we would be less well, but that's what it would take to deal with our environmental and maybe even social crisis. So I've researched, where are the seeds right now of these politics of being. And I found they are in some groups which are very much coalescing around some specific shared values. And I've listed some of them, and all of them, what is interesting, that have become the subject of science, and they are now entering the political field. So for example, when I'm eco-civilization, when we talk about that, usually it's about how we harmonize ourselves with how nature works. So that's a value of life, and we have different proposals and countries that are really turning that into a new vision for their society. In South America, we have Buen Vivir based on indigenous cosmogonies and cultures. And in China, for example, has committed to become an ecological civilization. And of course, when you read the documents, you can feel how it has been shaped, how this vision is being influenced by, for example, traditions like Taoism and the Chinese traditional culture. We have other people that have mentioned the science of happiness. Well, now we have, as you know, Bhutan and the gross national happiness, which is also a development paradigm, and many countries that for which well-being becomes really at the center of their development agenda. Love. I've been traveling and invited by an organization the last few weeks by an organization called Charter for Compassion. And we have now some 400 cities in the world that have committed to become compassionate city and develop action plans around that. Peace. We have a UN resolution for a culture of peace or culture of partnership and many actions around within that vision. Mindfulness. You may know that there is a report that has been published called UK Mindful Nation, which highlights the potential of mindfulness in different sectors in terms of public policies. And this has been endorsed by more than 100 members of parliament in the UK. Systemic and complex thinking or integral thinking is also being very influential in terms of proposing new solutions to challenges in different sectors. So I tried to understand, what was a common ground between all of these. I call them spiritual values because I believe these are qualities that tend to reflect a more awakened person. And indeed, I think there's a strong basis, if you look in Western philosophy, to advocate for these values shaping the good life, the transcendentals from Plato, truth, goodness, beauty, has been traditionally in the Western world the way to think about the good society. And later on, the Catholic Church said they were at the image of God, while they are reflecting an absolute. All these qualities are reflecting something that is absolute. They are kind of the higher qualities, values we can think of. And We could mention also freedom. Hegel, the German philosopher Hegel, has said that freedom was the main characteristic of the human, of the mind, of the spirit, and development in history was going toward more expression of our true nature, which is freedom. So I think there is a strong history in using this kind of spiritual values to say that they should shape our societies. And from these values, I've been able, because there are science for each of them, and because often associated with them comes recommendations and even practical experience in applying these to in different sectors, we can develop a policy agenda, very concrete, mainly based on real examples for the politics of being. So, for example, it's not exhaustive, just some example. But if we take the importance of family, we know that the first years in our life are decisive for our capacities to flourish. And even, I would say, not only to flourish, but also to contribute positively to society. Because, and that's important, we have to recognize that human flourishing, a healthy human, tends to naturally contribute positively to society. But to offer that love, we need first to receive it. And that means we need the presence, for example, of our parents. Well, here in the US, there is no parental leave policy at the federal level. In Sweden, parents can get up to 18 months of parental leave with some 80% of their income. So that makes a huge difference on child development, and how from there certain behaviors, certain values in cultures manifest. Another example, in education, if we want people to develop a systemic understanding and see the interconnectedness between everything they learn, we should not be so much stuck with having a knowledge compartmentalized in different disciplines, but rather what a lot of good education systems now emphasize, topics-based learning. Happiness science, how we can, in education, positive education, teach pupils how to nurture their well-being to become more resilient. Or cooperative learning, as I said, now often schools are really teaching us from a very young age competition. But on the contrary, we could have organized classes to allow pupils to work together and help each other to understand, what is being taught. All these approaches are now well developed, and for example, in the Finnish education system, we have all of that. And some of these, and that's, even specialists in education who does not come necessarily from this perspective of a politics of being, recognize what is the future of education. Well, they say, it's more about life skills, character, etc., because that's what will be helpful in the 21st century, where there is artificial intelligence, very developed access to information and knowledge, etc. So all these proposals are becoming, even in their own fields, recognized as the way forward. For example, in health, the mental health, because our health issues are more and more about chronic disease. It's about our lifestyle. And our lifestyle is very linked to our mental health. So it's very under invested, and it could lead to very positive returns for societies. I won't go just to give you the understanding of the methodology I've used to build this policy agenda. And as I said, the good news is that it can be very concrete and based on real examples. And I call that a second stage, direct and indirect investment in human development. So usually when we talk about human development, we refer to physical health, to education, and other things like income, etc. So I call that a second stage because we need to move toward an education that is more geared toward the inner aspects of ourselves. And the same with, I talk about mental health. So go beyond only physical health, but complement that with a mental health approach. Direct, because, when we talk about education, when we talk about family or even mental health, often it's very direct, the impact on being. But when I talked about justice, I said, even the issues we tackle, we should tackle them through a way that cultivate, this interbeing paradigm, that cultivate the human values. So as I said in the beginning, I think politics of being is the value. These values are universal and can provide the ground for the world unification and a civilization of the universal, as Senghor said, the former president of Senegal. He said, like, globalization could be seen as an opportunity for each culture to offer their best. So right now, nations kind of compete with the same metrics about GDP and economic growth. But with this new paradigm, every nation needs to define what is a good life and reconnect to its own wisdom. And what is very interesting, and you may have noted that maybe in the previous presentation, that when I researched traditional wisdom, I found out that they are all almost rooted in the story of interbeing. And even in some cases, even the very word that characterizes traditional wisdom, like Ubuntu, for example, in South Africa, it says, I am because you are, which is the definition of interbeing in the Buddhist tradition I practice with. And we find this kind of sentence in a lot of different traditional wisdom. So I will go quick. The graph here is just to say that we see still cultural blocks. So these are dimensions. It's a cultural map of the world. And we see that cultures, evolve really together. They are, 𝐂𝐤𝐬𝐧𝐵 says social cultural change is past dependent. That means where we are going depends from where we are coming from. And cultural heritages are remarkably enduring. So if we want to evolve the philosophical foundation of our societies, and these values, these modern values of individualism, materialism, reductionism that has tend to spread around the world, of anthropocentrism, we need to reconnect with our own roots, with our own cultural, spiritual roots. So in conclusion, in this book, I talk a lot about trauma because I think, as I said, a healthy person contributes positively to society, and healing trauma is the gateway to being. And this needs to happen at the individual and collective level. Wisdom and science are the pillars of the politics of being. I tried to develop in that book a strong rationale, understandable by decision makers and average citizens, and provide a simple but integrative conceptual framework so that, all the movements that tend to believe sometimes they don't recognize how they are connected. I try to show how they are connected and how we can be stronger together, that recognize that behind, all these values is this fundamental orientation towards being. And I provide very concrete policy recommendations. So there's a deep vision and there's no doubt a very profound vision, but all the recommendations are very concrete and based on real examples. So that is something, it's a very different society, much better, that there is no doubt we can make happen if we just, take out the best of these models. And I think it's a definition of a field of research and action. And you're all welcome to contribute to it. Here's the website, and there's a YouTube channel with lots of materials, and also we are on social media. Well, thank you very much. This book comes with a foreword by Mathieu Ricard, and is being endorsed by many thought leaders, such as, for example, former Federico Mayer, the former Director General of UNESCO. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Thomas. That was wonderful and very inspirational. So I'm wondering now, we have about 10 more minutes, but there's also a brief video you would like to show. Is that correct?
Yeah, if we have time, we can end up with a 4-minute video, but let's see.
Okay, however you want to do this is your show. So we have 10 minutes to include a video or to have group conversation, whatever you would like.
Good.
Would you like to go straight to the video, or would you like to invite questions?
I think we can have at least 5 minutes then of at least of question and answer, and then we can have the video. If
Perfect, perfect. So if you have a question, either yeah, typing it in there, we're not going to read all that for the moment, but if you want to raise your hand and share something, that would be good. Or you can press the reactions button and raise your hand that way. Donna, please go ahead.
Hi, Thomas, and sorry for the long comment. I was listening and taking all that in, and I have great appreciation, respect for all that you shared there. Very important, and things that I think we do want to learn and bring into the world. And I know some of the people here and some I don't. But I think many of us are also wrestling with how to bring this stuff to ground, which is really what this is about. And so one of the things that I'm just musing about, okay, is those that hear some of this and have already been traversing this path. And you've met many of them because we show up in these places and we soak this stuff in and we believe in this and we want very much to bring it into the world, are kind of in that place of, okay, now what? Apart from sharing in a kind of a lecturing format of here's everything I know about this. So, and I think we all wrestle with that of different ways of sharing, to the point where I even wonder where some people start to get a bit numb because they've heard this and they're going, yeah, and they're nodding. And we get asked a lot this question of, okay, now what do we do with this? Or what is the work that in fact is going on at that policy level that's going to start to get there? These are not easy questions that I'm asking, but I'm jumping right to that because I'm being, I'm speaking my truth around what's really going on as I listen to it. I'm nodding, I'm agreeing, I'm supporting it all. And then I'm saying, we're trying to build some bridges here and and this is not just you. There's a lot of folks that aren't going to read these books. They're not. So we need to find all these multimodal ways of being this, shaping this change. Some of it is being patient and just, yes, letting evolution take its course. And for some of us, we're trying to find ways of helping it along. So I'll stop because I've already gone on for too long, but I was kind of sitting there feeling all this as I was listening to you and delighted to be in a room with you again.
Thank you, Donna. No, you're right, and maybe I don't have the magic answer to that, but I can. I think what's important first is to being able to recognize where are the seeds of that, because often it goes a little bit unrecognized. We don't see how all these different agendas are connected and are the way that we can grow consciousness without necessarily labeling it as it is. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that we need to come more together. Sometimes the different groups I have identified sometimes are not really connected with one another and don't realize that they are part of the same thing. The third point I would say is, and it's about also coming together, and I'll give an example, but in particular into specific sectors. So for example, I'm working with UNDP and the Conscious Food Systems Alliance that we are convening. Basically, we are convening all the relevant stakeholders in that sector to come together and to see how we can work on mindsets, values, cultural change, build the inner human capacities for the systemic transformation we need. So always, the same thing, by coming together, we become much stronger. And what I have seen also, and that's very interesting, is that I think we are more also than what we think we are. But people don't feel entitled to step into that agenda because it's often taboo. And people tend to feel very isolated in their own organizations. So when we open that space to bring people together, to develop that kind of connection, that peer support, to equip them with tools and knowledge to advance that agenda, I think we can achieve much more.
Thank you so much, Thomas. So would you like now to go to the video? We have exactly the amount of time to be able to run it, unless you want to stay in conversation mode, as you like.
I would say let's go. If we
Let's
don't see
go.
any other hands raised, do you run it,
Let's go. Yeah,
Alexander?
I'm all set for that. So what I'm going to ask, though, because I'm trying to do this well, is I'm going to start the video, and I might not have the visual to see if there are thumbs up. So I'm going to need somebody to turn off their microphone and say, yes, we have audio. Okay, as we get going here.
I can do that.
Thanks so much. So here we go. I will launch the video now, make sure we share sound. And here we go.
Yes, it works.
Thank you so much. That was wonderful and inspirational. Yes, just making sure we're having no more YouTube playing at the moment. We are at time, my friends. So I think what I can do right here is just give a big thanks to Thomas. Merci bien pour ce que tu as fait pour nous. This was really wonderful. and very inspirational. And I think this has given us a lot of tips and a lot of suggestions for how we can engage in the politics of being, which is essential, truly essential for creating the conditions for the emergence of an eco-civilization of peace and well-being, just as you have said. Thank you so, so much. We are now going to take another 4-minute break. I'm going to stop the recording now. I am also